Hello, Internet. My name is Chamomile.
And I'm Requiem. Cam, I'd like to open this episode with a prayer.
I guess it would be rude to say no.
All right. Calliope, goddesses of epic poetry, that felt like this closest thing to podcasting on the list of muses. Would you please bless this podcast and make it so we don't have any more technical glitches or mistakes about who specific muses have jurisdiction over what things? In Calliope's name we pray, amen.
Amen. I'm glad it was just a muse. I was worried it was going to be some kind of, like, space demon.
When have I ever invoked a demon from space?
I don't know where Zorglax is from, so I can't say for sure, but
He's from a different dimension, Cam. You know that. You were friends with him. He ate your body.
this is true. Which sounds bad, but in context, it was a bonding moment. With that said, I mean, I did only meet him the one time. I didn't get a whole lot of time to, like, really connect with him. Like, he seemed nice, but
That's not an S level relationship yet.
it is not. Oh, yeah, that's right. This is just a random encounter. But yes, I said at the end of the last episode that we would be heading towards the main plot. This was a lie. We are instead heading back to Oleg's trading post, where, with luck, we can grab ourselves a Twink before heading towards the main plot. Also, strictly speaking, I'm heading for another side quest first, but it's one relevant to Tartuccio, so...
And we do appreciate all the generous donations to our Twink Fund.
Yes. Albeit, we seem to mostly be getting pictures of Twinks, which...
I'm not complaining.
Yeah, I mean, like, they're not going to waste, just to be clear, but that isn't what we went, just for the record. Like, by all means, keep them coming, but they will not help us add Twinks to the party any faster.
So we've got a ton of loot.
Yeah, first, I'm going to go and sell everything I obviously don't need. I mean, it's a trade item. I just sell all of it. Apparently, I can't hold on whimsical berries to eat for myself. Nor can I use rare roots for anything.
But what if we get to the rare root dungeon and we need some of those rare roots?
And would you rather have rare roots for the rare root dungeon or a Twink? Yeah, these are cooking.
I mean, we might need the Twink for the Twink dungeon. That is probably a real place somewhere, the Twink dungeon.
I mean, I hope so. I can get behind that. Like, it might not be exactly my thing, but I'm not going to complain. Okay, I can go ahead and sell all of these spears, all of these leather armors. Don't need any composite short bows. This pearl is worth 1 gold piece. I thought... Yeah, these gems are not worth nearly as much as I'm used to. I'm used to them being worth like 10 gold pieces minimum, and frequently 50 or more. These wolf pelts are worth more.
searching for Twink Dungeon has just given me advice about how to twink yourself out for a dungeon.
That's disappointing.
I mean, I guess we're about to do that.
I'll just pop outside so I can get my party back. So that I can assign all the magical items I've gotten. Pathfinder, and this is a problem they inherited from 3rd edition D&D, is a little bit ludicrous with how many magic items you get and require to stay balanced. There's like a standard set of 6 magical items that every character should have by around level 5 or 6 or so. And then, you just swap in upgrades for those items, and that is 75% of the magic items you get, which at that point, you may as well just build those stat bonuses directly into the leveling progression.
Yeah, I just had a realization. When I complained about Lindsay not seeming like, she didn't have the gnome story about, like, needing to go have new experiences?
Yes.
That might be because she's not a gnome.
Oh, is she a halfling? She is a halfling. That makes sense. Fair enough.
But you know what? I feel like this proves my point about the gnomes and the halflings stepping on each other's toes, since we could not tell.
It's true. That is fair.
I just noticed in her picture that her feet were gigantic. And I was like, wait. You can't tell in this one, but in the one of the cutscenes that came up, you could see her feet, and they were enormous. I was like, oh god, she's a halfling, isn't she?
I mean, Tartuccio is, I'm almost positive, a gnome. I think they actually called him a gnome at one point. And, he didn't seem like he's particularly chasing after new experiences. Oh, hey, I've still got some agates. I should offload those. Amiri is probably the character we are keeping the longest, so I'll go ahead and give her...
She's a fit girl.
She is. Although, that is not the reason so much as for party balance reasons. But, I mean, I guess if we're classifying our party by their body type, which that's how we're classifying the Twinks, so, for the sake of equality, I guess we should.
So what is Selwyn?
Probably a waif. Like, she's not super hard. Yeah, like, if you have the triangle of the thick girl, the waif, and thick, like, if waif is the top point, right, then she's probably a couple of notches straight down from that. Or, like, waif is definitely the body type she's trending towards, but she's definitely not hitting it hard.
Right. Not sure about Lindsay.
What? You could use the Belt of Incredible Dexterity. I know I've got a Belt of Strength, don't I? Or was I getting that confused with the Belt of Incredible Dexterity? Nah, here's the Belt of Giant Strength. It bugs me in Pathfinder how all physical stat bonus increases are belts, and all mental stat bonus increases are... I know they're not literally tiaras, but yeah, okay, headbands. I forgot exactly what they call them, but yeah. I think the idea with that is for balance reasons.
Yeah, because it kind of... I know it's screwed you over specifically if you're because then you have to do a Cloak of Charisma, but then you can't get the Cloak of Resistance.
Right.
So it makes sense. It makes it a little more equitable.
Okay. Flail is 1d8. A mace is 1d6, so we're selling that.
Also, on Selwyn, it's definitely a tiara.
Can you use a wand to cure moderate wounds? You can. Wand of Grease. We'll go ahead and stick that on you. Didn't realize it was going to take so much time. Yeah, this is what managing the inventory screen looks like, so I guess we've delivered that content, and in the future, we will probably skip it. I mean, not skip it, we'll do it off screen, because this magic item management, like I said, because of how common magic items are in Pathfinder, it's absolutely vital to having a, to keeping up balance-wise, but it is certainly not extremely exciting. Okay, I think I've equipped everything I can equip, which means everything else we are selling.
Now, we never got to have the opportunity for this to happen in the tabletop version, but at some point, Sullivan absolutely would have worn a hennin with no explanation. Like, I would have mentioned that in game, like, all right, Sullivan is wearing a hennin.
I'm not sure what that is.
A princess hat. You know, the comical ones. You know she would have.
Oh, absolutely.
And, like, technically she was queen, but I think she would have insisted on being referred to as princess.
It's also, like... I think that's something that should have happened, like, towards the very end. Just, like... just as sort of like, a, you know, after everything that's happened... Selwyn is still Selwyn, right?
She has changed. She has had growth. She is a new person, but she's still Selwyn.
Right. Oh yeah, we're going to be able to afford this Twink easily.
Oh, yes. Are we able to get 2 Twinks?
Probably not. Now, we might get, like, you know, halfway to our second Twink, but... the problem is the cost of the mercenaries does go up as we level, so it's possible that the cost of our second Twink will move away from us by the time we've actually got enough money for him, but we can't always just delay leveling if we have to, and I'm also trying to figure out which of these scrolls do we really want. Ray of Enfeeblement, potentially useful. Shield of Faith. Scroll of Raise Dead, absolutely need to hold on to that one. Yeah, these are all potentially helpful. Except maybe the protection from chaos, but scrolls are real cheap anyway, so probably no point in selling them.
How many character deaths did we have in our tabletop version of this?
At least half a dozen.
One guy had 3 characters die. One guy had the 1 die. The other guy had the 1 die. I think 5.
So, I classify my, whenever a character dies in one of my games, you know, I always sort of take a step back and, like, ask myself, is this just a consequence of choices having consequences? And, you know, therefore a good thing, right? Like, if player choices are meaningful, then that means it is possible for them to choose wrong, in that, you know, they can make a choice that's actually counter to their goals. That's an important part of player agency. It's not the only way to run D&D, to be clear. Like, you can run a game of D&D that, where success is basically inevitable, and no matter what you do, the GM will railroad you into victory. And because the ultimate outcome is good, some players are totally okay with that. But even a form of railroading that is basically just like, and it's not total railroading too, even it's like, you guys can take whatever side routes you want, but in the end, you're going to arrive at the ending where you are champions who have saved the day. Which is still a form of railroading, and is still fairly unpopular with players, even though no one likes to lose their character when it happens. I find that players usually like the idea that their characters can die. They think it's worth it. I can't say for sure how common that is. It might just be survivorship bias, right? That the people who play with me are the ones who think that, because otherwise they wouldn't play with me. But it's definitely, you know, there's at least 2 or 3 dozen players in the world who think that way. And probably more, unless literally every single one of them found their way to my games.
After the first couple character deaths, I went and made a bunch of backup characters for if Selwyn died, and that turned out to be the key to immortality.
But yeah, I have 3 categories that I sort player deaths into. Which is, number 1, a bullshit death where the player didn't really have a chance to run away. Number 2, what I call spider deaths, after a spider dungeon in Petals and Thorns that is both extremely popular and very likely to be the one that kills a player character or two. People usually die there, but it's deaths that are at like exactly the right balance, where they die there and they have this click moment where they realize, oh, I died in there because I was acting like I was invincible. If I'd been more careful, I could have made that work, right? Like, that was touch and go, and if I'd just been a little bit more clever, if I'd, not even more clever isn't even the right way of putting it, if I'd just been paying a little bit more attention, then I could have made that touch and go in my favor, instead of touch and go and then one of us died. And that tends to be like, as much as it hurts to lose a player character, players love that dungeon because they realize that they are in control, that they can lose, but also they can win. And then there are what I call geyser deaths, which I have named after another moment. There is a dungeon in Petals and Thorns where there are several geysers full of magical bubbling liquid that this wizard guy has been dipping goblins into in order to mutate them into other goblinoids, like bugbears and hobgoblins and such. And he's even trying to like develop new types of goblinoids, like he's got a fire hobgoblin he makes. And so one of my players said he wanted to jump into it, and I said, it's like, well, the goblin form is like specifically mutable in this setting. For pretty much anyone else, you're just jumping into a geyser, which is absurdly boiling molten hot and tends to kill people basically instantly. And he's like, yeah, but I still want to jump in. And I'm like, okay, you take 10d6 fire damage from that. You're like level 4. And he wasn't even a particularly tough class. I think he was a warlock in 5e. So, we rolled the damage, and he died instantly. It's like, okay, so that's what happens when you jump into a geyser. I felt like the warning was fairly clear. So, geyser deaths are just what I classify as pretty much literally suicide. Yeah, the only relevant part of that story is just that pretty much all the deaths, in fact, in the Kingmaker, I can't think of any exceptions, were all what I would classify as spider deaths, except that the players never seem to take the hint, except Selwyn. Selwyn was the character, but, except for Requiem then. And in fairness, there was another guy in there. I don't know if he wants me saying his name on air.
After we had so many characters die, I developed what I called the Selwyn strategy, which was running away when stuff looked tough, which occasionally was helped by the fact that Selwyn was a naiad and could swim underwater, but I'd also just turn invisible or throw up an illusion to protect myself. And this running away strategy worked pretty well. Especially when you're fighting, 3 trolls at level 2?
Yeah, and, that one was partly this random encounter table was balanced very poorly. Also, one second while hang on, why am I doing this? For starters, connection is particularly spotty out here, which I assume is because my phone isn't haunt-proofed. But yeah, let's do the traditional thing and have you look up. There is a Kingmaker guide that has a couple. So I remember the class that we're going for here. We want a cleric of some kind of water god.
Do you know the guide I'm supposed to look for?
I mean, I would know it if I saw it. I'm almost positive we want to boost wisdom. Unfortunately, I forget what all the ASMR sub-races are. So
they'll have whether they do wisdom on the thing. I'm sure there's a plus wisdom ASMR.
So unfortunately, I cannot have a blue skin tone. That's disappointing.
I wonder if the Tiefling could. Why don't you have a Tiefling as a playable race? Don't
I
you have
don't
the
know.
DLC? It
If
should
it's a
be a
DLC
playable
thing,
race.
then that might be the reason why. I could probably pick it up. It wouldn't be a huge deal. It is like Christmas time,
Oh, I
so
thought you had the DLC, but don't worry about it.
yeah. I mean, some of the optimal choices are DLC races, but okay, we're gonna give him blue hair.
Was it a Reddit guide?
It was not, but I mean, if it works, it works. Hang on, let me just.
Okay, this is for the tabletop version, which is not actually helpful.
Yeah, no, it's from Gamer Guides.
Okay. Gamer guide.
Yeah, we're looking for
There
a
we
section
go.
on the dedicated Divine Caster. It should have stuff on the. I'm going to assume it's got to be.
Trying to. It's a gamer guide, though, right?
Yeah. There should be a section on build advice. This is about as good as I can get for approximating Kiernan's appearance, I think, so.
I'm looking at the. Yeah, probably. Okay, here we go. Builds. The dedicated Divine Caster. Here we go.
The Ecclesia Third.
Okay, you're doing an Ecclesia Third. You're going to want Strength 7,
Which
Dexterity 14.
we'll get into abilities in a second. For now, I need to know which.
Oh, sorry.
I need to know which heritage I'm going with, because.
We're looking for +2 Wisdom.
Yeah, Lawbringer looks like he gets bonuses to Constitution and Wisdom. That's all right. It's not really Kiernan at all, but whatever.
Dexterity and Wisdom.
Plumkith. Dexterity and Wisdom. That's not bad.
Intelligence.
So yeah, it's going to be this one. Deity selection. Which one of these? Do you know the water
Pretty
animal
cool about
guy
that.
off top of
It's
your head?
Gozra.
Who?
Gozra.
Gozra?
They are the god of
Right.
the storm and sky. So water and animal, right?
Yep, that's what the guide says. We're the best ones. And so long as water is in there, you know, it's Kiernan, so close enough.
Yep.
Okay. Here
Now,
we've got
what?
skills and abilities. We don't
Abilities?
need strength for shit. We definitely need to pump wisdom up to maximum.
Yep. 14 dexterity, 14 con, 10 intelligence, 11 charisma.
Okay, that may well be optimal, but Kiernan is canonically sexy, so we're giving him a 15 charisma. We're playing on easy baby mode, so it shouldn't make a huge difference.
Yeah.
Now, let's go ahead. Let's give him lore nature. Lore religion is a weird one, but no one else is going to have it, so I don't know where he got it, but we're giving it to him. And none of the other class skills are particularly good. Sullivan already has Arcana, but I guess we'll just give him Persuasion because roleplay. This is one thing about Pathfinder, is that properly role-playing a character, you know, in character creation, you know, just creating the character you want to create, requires a lot of system mastery and a lot of selective feature selection, because my god, you absolutely cannot just pick whatever works for the character and expect to have something good at the end of it.
Yeah. What was the test you have for character creation? I forget what it's called.
Oh yeah, the test for character generators in general, and this includes purely visual things for video games, but also for uh, in role playing games mechanically. The Jurassic Man test, named after a superhero that my little brother invented when he was like 9. He is a dinosaur person, and if your character generator can make Jurassic Man, then it's probably sufficiently thorough. Because he has a bunch of bizarre abilities that are just, everything a 9-year-old thought was cool slapped together. So he has like pterodactyl wings that let him fly, and he has velociraptor claws, and he has a terrifying T-Rex roar, and a whole bunch of weird stuff. If I can make Jurassic Man in your character creation system, then your character creation system can handle some extremely weird combinations, which means it should be able to handle practically any concept thrown at it, so long as it is basically humanoid. If your character creation system can additionally allow me to make Amaterasu from Okami, like the Okami version of that character, who is a mythological character and has many forms, but the Okami version, where she is a dog with magical paintbrush abilities, then that is extra double bonus points, because that is an extremely weird idea. That is not even a humanoid.
Well, I've got some ideas for character concepts. Maybe you could tell me whether I could pull them off in Pathfinder or not.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. The first one, pretty easy, like a Fey sorceress type, like some nature power magic, but also some like illusion and enchantment. That'd be pretty easy to pull off, right? Could I do that?
Yeah, see, it's actually going to have to be one or the other. You can be a druid or a sorcerer. I guess you could multi-class. So, if you give it a couple of levels, and you're willing to accept the fact that you will always suck, and suck worse the longer the campaign goes on, as your multi-class continues to erode the level of power you're supposed to be at. Like, when everyone else has 9th level spells, you'll have, 4th level spells. You will literally be about half as effective as everyone else. But technically, yes.
All right. Well, what about like a Tinker Artificer type, like with cool steampunk gadgets, and maybe I can make golems and stuff? Can I do that?
Does having guns count?
It does not.
Okay. Then I don't want to say no, but no.
No. Okay. What about this would be a pretty cool concept, like a Nightcrawler. I'm a fighter, but I teleport around and stab people in the back. I should be able to get that off. That's just one stick. I should be able to do that, right?
I mean, teleportation is strictly speaking in the game. It's like a 5th level wizard spell, and I'm pretty sure it requires a standard, if not full action to cast, which makes it kind of useless in combat. But in extreme edge cases, you could teleport behind someone and then stab them.
Okay, what about I like Rio in Breath of Fire? I can turn into dragons. It's Dungeons and Dragons. Surely it's dragon-focused classes, right?
I mean, there's a lot of Pathfinder classes out there. So, maybe. And, I'm just going to sort of use, well, there's a lot of content out there, so maybe there's something I don't know about, as a catch-all for literally all of your classes. And since you're asking about it, you clearly do not have any thorough system mastery of Pathfinder yourself, and therefore couldn't possibly contradict me. So ha.
Can I play a werewolf?
Technically, yes. As long as you don't mind being weaker than an NPC class.
How long was Pathfinder in production? How many years? Was it a full decade?
About a full decade, yeah. Possibly a little bit longer, depending on exactly how you count it.
Yeah.
I guess we may as well take selective channel. Let's actually spell focus. What is the... I don't know what spells... What do clerics use to murder people with? I never tried it. I always played wizards and sorcerers.
So the guide says spell focus and greater spell focus and conjuration and evocation.
I guess we may as well. Let's go with conjuration.
And boon companion will make your pet stronger, and extra channel will increase the number of times you can burst. Oh boy, we get to pick out Kieran's voice. Chaotic neutral is very generous.
Oh, I have to be neutral. Okay. I have to have neutral somewhere on the axis, so... I mean, honestly, I was going for chaotic evil, but neutral evil suits him about as well, because alignment is bullshit. There's no carefree voice for males, I guess. That's too bad.
No.
Someone else would make better use of this.
Maybe.
No. Eh.
Pragmatic is better, though.
Defeat is not an option. Together we stand.
So many thoughts, so little time.
What about confident?
Their life ends here.
So probably pragmatic.
Care of it.
Yeah, particularly since, I mean, I'm feeling confident is probably going to be Ashlyn.
Yeah.
It's got this very ha-ha! Yeah.
Go ahead.
All right, so I guess we should, now that we've made our first twink, we should talk about the twinks, right?
Yeah.
Should we explain what a twink is?
I mean, I feel like that's a mystery some people have to figure out for themselves.
All right.
We gotta leave
twink is when
some
you,
mystery around the concept.
That's when you specialize a character, like you're twinked out for diplomacy.
Yeah, exactly. Twink
Right.
means that, and nothing else.
So in the game, Selwyn had a homebrew feat that let her summon a bunch of Fae friends, and early on, I decided she had 3 Fae friends who she had known in the Feywild, not the first world, in the Feywild, who had decided to come help her out, and they actually would hang around in the town that we founded, and
Yeah, there
one
is
of
some
them-
special bullshit about Selwyn's estate where creatures from the Feywild could hang out there indefinitely, despite their tether to the mortal world generally expiring pretty quick when she summoned them. So that was
Yeah.
just, a way of reconciling the mechanics with the thing. And we didn't even have to kick out the shitty cleric. I guess he can be a meat shield.
So, Kieran is one of her Fae friends. He's a Kelpie. Now, in Pathfinder, Kelpies they're the horse monsters, but they also can exclusively take the form of a beautiful, sexy lady, because Pathfinder is made by people who cannot comprehend the idea of someone being attracted to men.
Yeah, and I don't know this legend particularly well, and normally I would double check this kind of thing on the internet real quick, but isn't like the sexy man thing like the standard for the Kelpie?
Yes.
Like that's like in the actual mythological origin, they are actually sexy man monsters. Like those do happen.
Yeah. Sometimes they're sexy women, but they are sexy men just as often, maybe even a little more often. But it's just, everything in Pathfinder has to be a sexy woman, even the sexy men, apparently.
Even the bees.
Oh, God. But who among us isn't into boar? Did we explain that? Like, I think I offhandedly mentioned it.
Yeah, let's go ahead. Let's get into that.
So there's a race of bee people in Pathfinder. They're introduced in one of the monster manuals. Now, it makes sense that if you're doing bee people, that most or even all of them are going to be women. That makes sense. Most of the bee, with the exception of the drones, the bees are all female. So sure, that makes sense. And I was just one time I just remember that these race of bee people existed in Pathfinder. I was like, I'm going to see what their flavor is. I've never actually looked into it. I'm sure it's not really interesting, but I'll go look in it. There was this whole thing where instead of having drones to reproduce, they abduct men of other races and they feed them this like royal jelly type thing that just is like gives them this endless sexual ecstasy. And when the men are too old to engage in reproduction, they eat them.
So yeah, that is
This
clearly
somebody's fetish.
clearly somebody's fetish.
Like there was no reason you had to do that for your race of bee people. They could just have, a drone cast like bees do.
Yeah, it's weird because it's like Pathfinder wants to be, a fetish RPG, but doesn't want to admit it. And the thing is, I mean, obviously Pathfinder itself was marketed itself as a successor to D&D, a broad kitchen sink general audience's fantasy. So clearly, your fetish RPG is a far more niche concept. But if they had just, if someone made a fetish RPG and was just like, yeah, every single monster in this is a sexy lady, then like even that being unnecessarily restrictive, like there's no reason you couldn't have sexy men in it. But okay, fine, it's a niche market RPG, and you decided to market it exclusively to straight men. But like, if it's a niche product, then that could be okay. But for some reason, someone thought it was okay to do that in Pathfinder, which is like the most generic general audiences thing you can do.
They get the designers get kind of pissy when you suggest that this is a kitchen thing that should have anything in it. They act sort of like, oh, there's stuff that should be excluded. But it's like Pathfinder is a kitchen sink to end all kitchen sinks. You don't at the point it's got so much in it that it's at the point where there's no excuse for excluding anything. If somebody wants to be a good necromancer, you have to let them. If somebody wants to be a werewolf, you have to let them. Like there's so much in Pathfinder that it's past the point where they have a justification for excluding anything.
Well, yeah, and I mean, they market themselves as kitchen sink. They market themselves as a generic fantasy. It's only when they're defending their stupid decisions and, like when they're stamping their foot and saying, no, you can't be a werewolf, okay? Werewolves aren't allowed. Like, and that could be okay for a specific campaign. It could be okay to say, like, no, a werewolf is too far out of tone for this campaign. But Pathfinder, as a setting, is very obviously a kitchen sink. It should be able to support as many stories as possible.
And it's like in general, like there are settings where like in general you probably want to pare stuff down. You want to exclude stuff. That's not this setting. This is not a setting that excludes stuff.
Hold your tongue, gnome. I can hardly tell your twaddle from the buzzing of a fly.
It's very frustrating. Like they've said, like, oh, steampunk is out of tone. It's like, what is the tone of Pathfinder? It does not have a tone.
You've got fucking robots. There was an entire adventure path. It was like the Iron Gods one or whatever, about like a spaceship crashed into the world Greyhawk style. That is far more into the sci-fi tone than steampunk is.
Nice.
To be honest, I just want to romance the undead person with the scythe.
Is she romanceable?
I mean, she'd better be.
Now, Chamomile has made Kieran neutral evil because of the alignment restriction of the cleric class. In actuality, Kiernan was chaotic good in the game.
Yeah, I mean, while we're talking about the Twinks, we kind of wandered off track there, but why don't you... I mean, I guess technically I designed these characters, and I mean, so the way we designed the Twinks, let's go ahead and start with that, is Requiem would come to me with a name, a stat block, which wasn't always the same stat block as, like, you know, the Kiernan is a Kelpie, so when he was summoned, it would usually be in his murder horse form. I don't think he ever actually got summoned, but if he were summoned, that's what the form he would have taken. But,
Yeah.
you know, he was also a twink in, like, when he was hanging out at the estate, which Kelpies actually explicitly go back and forth between that one, so that's not the best example. The best example is probably the Shadow Mastiff, where, you know...
I don't know what you're talking about.
He got...
Camille's about to tell a bunch of lies. Don't listen to him.
I mean, I have to assume you just found a really good Shadow Mastiff-looking twink picture and decided, yes, this is what we're doing this now. I should have used Inspire. Oh, well.
Was there a Shadow Mastiff that was also a twink?
There
Maybe.
was. And yeah, so when he got summoned, he would be in Shadow Mastiff form. When he was hanging out at the estate, he was in twink form. That guy may or may not end up being one of our mercenaries, because we got a bunch to get through, but then after a while we get into some of the more bizarre Fae friends, who are some of my favorites, but it also means they're impossible to make with a regular character creator.
Yeah. Blevin was more of a twunk, in my defense.
I don't see how that's defense. Like, that still doesn't make him any closer to being a Shadow Mastiff.
Shadow Mastiffs are the twunk of the monster world.
If you say so.
But I would come to him with a picture, a stat block,
Yeah,
and a name,
a
and
name.
he would make up the personality.
Then,
And with
yeah.
the Twinks, I did say, like, these three are in a love triangle, figure it out.
Right. And that was like the only character of his that I'd had any hand in making before at that point was Mug Thwumpy, the Pug Wumpy, which was just sort of it was a joke that was... I'll figure out how your build works later. For now, you're just going to be a beat stick. But yeah, Mug Thwumpy was a joke that was serious enough that it could still be a real character, so we went with that. So, you know, he comes to me with these three twinks. He says they're in a love triangle. He says figure it out. And so I'm like, oh, God. I'm always really nervous whenever someone says, like, oh, yeah, you know, go ahead and just use this backstory hook for whatever. Or something. Because, like, okay, you know, if I fuck up a part of my own story, then I can just slide past it. It's no big deal. We'll just move on to the next thing. If I fuck up their backstory, then that's, like, their only backstory. So, yeah, I'm always really nervous about messing up someone else's character. And,
I guess I'm, you know,
like-
the point is, you know, like, the only character I have is the one I am. Like, the point of the other characters is for you to do stuff.
right. And, like, it did end up working out really well once I got into the swing of it. Like, I was really hesitant with the Twinks at first, but what I had decided on, ultimately, is that, so Kiernan is a Kelpie. He is in love with Ashlan the Satyr. And the reason for that is that Ashlan is a, you know, he's a party boy. He loves to have a good time. And Kiernan, who is this Kelpie who likes to, you know, lure people into the water and drown them. Probably how Selwyn met the other two.
No, Kiernan, Ashland's in love with Kiernan, right?
Is that... Yes, no, I'm sorry. I am getting things mixed up. I said that backwards. But yeah. Ashlan is in love with Kiernan because he is hot. And that's the wavelength that Ashlan works on.
As in one description of it, Camille said that Ashland's pretty clever when he's thinking with his stomach or his stick, which means he's kind of an idiot 2/3 of the time.
Yeah. But yeah, so Ashlan is in love with Kiernan. Kiernan is in love with the Prince in Grey. I forget what that guy's stat block actually is.
He's a Chuxani, which is a Pathfinder original Fae. They steal color.
Which is a cool concept. Like, one thing that I think Pathfinder did right is that, they churned out just a gigantic amount of monsters, and so a lot of them were duds, but that's kind of inevitable when you're trying to create original monsters. Like, you're going to mess it up a bunch. It's hard to do. And by having just a huge total number, it means that they had a bunch of good ones. But yeah, so Prince in Grey steals people's colors, and so he is in love with Ashlan because of his fiery red hair and his fiery red heart. And so, he sort of has this, and it's me making them, so obviously there's going to be a vampire at some point. He has this vampire vibe to him, where, he is sort of doomed to sustain himself by parasitizing others. Where is Valeria? Did I murder her already? Is she just going to die? Or did she and
I don't know what
Tartuccio
happened to
bug
her.
out? Did he just leave all those no-name mercenaries to fight me?
He might have.
Okay, I'm going to start moving into color spray range. But yeah, so Kiernan was in love with the Prince in Grey because he had that whole brooding vampire thing to him, and he was kind of hoping to get Prince in Grey to turn to the dark side and found the fairy Sabat with him. And, they're just embrace the most antisocial parts of their own natures and, go around drowning people and stealing their color. And yeah, that was the Twink love triangle.
I don't know if we ever made this official, but it was discussed that this situation was probably Selwyn's fault.
Yeah. Particularly because Prince in Grey and Ashlan can just straightforwardly be good for each other. That was like sort of the good ending for their relationship that I was angling towards. That was going to happen at the climax, which we never got to because we broke off partway through book 4, possibly book 5, I forget which one.
Because of the apocalypse.
But yeah, because of the apocalypse. But yeah, it was going to be that Ashlan was going to make some noble sacrifice, or not. Actually, I forget which way I was going to go. Prince in Grey, at some point, was going to make a noble sacrifice for Ashlan, possibly in response to Ashlan making some kind of noble sacrifice for him. And it was going to end up with, because, assuming that she had, Selwyn had won in the Feywild, and so now, it sort of bends to her will. The selflessness of the Prince in Grey sacrifice would sort of, it would cure him of his need to devour color. And so he and Ashlan would just get a happily ever after, because there's the whole thing of the Prince in Grey loves Ashlan, but if he ever tries to be with him, he will inevitably, by his very proximity, drain away all of his colors.
There was at one point, so Selwyn had set up a council, like an advisory council, to sort of legitimize her rule, and was going to have representatives from different people, nobles she appointed. And she was going to have somebody who would be the representative of the Fae, and was trying to figure out who would be the representative of the Fae, and Prince in Grey offered, but I was never able, I was worried that this was some sort of trick, because I kept failing, he did not have a good, that good of a bluff roll, but I kept failing the sense motive roll, because I am cursed by Fortuna, so I was like, something's up, I'm really suspicious.
And you weren't completely wrong, because there was sort of this could theoretically go either way kind of a thing. Is that I was kind of excited to have Prince in Grey on the council, because how the the Twink love triangle was going to resolve itself was mainly going to come down to whether or not, Prince in Grey would, sacrifice himself on the altar of his love for Ashlan there. And so whether or not he would be willing to do that was going to have a large part to do with how Selwyn, sort of the precedents that she set for him, the things that she impressed upon him were important to her kingdom, kind of a deal. So it is possible, he could end up breaking towards Kiernan instead and, becoming the Fairy Sabbat.
Sullivan was on the swing towards goodness at that point, though. So
yeah.
Probably
So
would've
I was
gone.
I was anticipating that Prince in Grey was going to end up getting the good ending and ending up with Ashlan, and Kieran can go brood in the corner.
she did. She kind of broke up the love triangle at that point too. She was like, she told Kiernan to stop fucking around with Prince and Grey's heart.
Yeah.
And she had to sit down with Prince and Grey. That was kind of touching, where they discussed like what he wanted, and it was like, well, he does genuinely seem to love Ashlan, but he knows that inevitably he'll hurt him. There were a couple other candidates for.
Sullivan has the best mobility, so here we go.
There were a couple other candidates for Fae Counselor. Like there was a unicorn, but we just the discussion among the actual party was we cannot have a unicorn on the council trying to push us to do good all the time. That's going to be exhausting.
Yeah. Is that the unicorn was too unpalatable to the other party members, one of whom was pretty staunchly neutral, and just very much in the sense of fuck this, I got a job to do kind of a deal. And the other of whom was actively working for the Chitons, who I was running as very much like the Hellraiser demons.
Yeah. We unfortunately did not get to resolve that plot either. I don't know what Camille had planned for that, because he was like, he had some sort of pact with the Chitin Lord. And I think like there was going to be some sort of like we were going to owe the Chitin Lord part of our kingdom or something.
Yeah, the Chitons were going to, particularly in the final book or two, going to start asserting themselves more and more. And so, the party was going to have to try and figure out what to do about that.
Had you decided which Chitin Lord it was going to be, or was it just going to be a made-up one? Or
I was just going to make one up.
You,
I mean, yeah, because I did not find any of the pre-written Chitin lores to be especially compelling, so...
How bad Pathfinder was at making demon lords was always really weird, because it's like...
They seem very good at creating broad concepts and very bad at creating specific characters.
Well, the thing is, like, Paizo did Dragon and Dungeon magazine before Wizards of the Coast pulled their license, and they did a lot of articles on demon lords that were always I enjoyed reading. I don't know if this is nostalgia glasses wearing, that if maybe I went back they wouldn't be as good, but they had, and they were interesting write-ups, and so I would think that they would have done really well at making their own demon lords, but then when they actually did the write-ups, they were always terrible for their own original ones, whereas the ones they did that were just the Greyhawk ones were always really interesting to read. I don't know if that's just because like that it was actually the Greyhawk lore thing, or if they had restrictions on them that meant they couldn't indulge some of their dumber stuff, or what.
These are some very tough kobolds.
You also,
I guess they're kobold sentinels, so they probably got class levels or something.
yeah. So like it was always really weird that they made so many. You'd think they'd have some hits, but mostly they're kind of eh.
Yeah, I don't know what went wrong with their, because it's true of the eldest as well of the Fae.
I'm positive I could give you 6 interesting Fey Lords if you gave me 20 minutes. And maybe that's just because of Keltaboo, but I'm pretty confident. As long as we're on the topic of Demon Lords, should we talk about Nocticula?
It's a shame that we don't have a Patreon, because that feels like it would make fantastic bonus content for it.
Yeah. We'll start our Twink fund at some point.
We'll just have to figure out how many real actual US dollars it takes to buy a Twink. No, I guess we did figure that out though. It's 200,000. So we're definitely gonna need a lot of patrons whenever we get that started, which we have no immediate plans for. But you know, just if you're listening to this and at some point a Patreon got started, please do contribute to that. It turns out Twinks are really expensive. But yeah, if we hit $200,000 on Patreon, we will buy a Twink and we will have him on the show.
I think Jathal can level up.
Oh yeah, she's still level 1. She is still level 1. Okay, and she levels up automatically, so...
But like, let's talk about Nocticula, who I think is my least favorite demon lord.
She is the demon lord of the Succubi, right? The one who gets a
Yeah, she's
redemption
also
arc in
got,
one of
like,
the adventure
assassins.
paths.
She's got assassinations and shadows, but like her primary thing is darkness. She gets a redemption arc, and people have talked about how Paizo, everybody who gets is a sexy lady, and by sexy lady I mean specifically they have sex somewhere as like a major part of their identity, like they're a succubus or they're the Rune Lord of Lust. I'm not joking. The Rune Lord of Lust gets a redemption arc, because of course she does.
Yeah.
Nocticula gets a redemption arc because she is very blatantly somebody's wife, somebody's anime wife.
Waifu, yeah.
Waifu.
That's the word you're looking for there. I don't know if that's how it's actually pronounced, but it's how it's pronounced in the West, which, you know, that concept in the West, I imagine, means something very different from whatever it means in the East.
Like, first of all, like, it was blatant that she was going to go good at some point, because it's pointed out in the very first write-up that she primarily assassinates other demon lords. She kills other demons. Like, the niche of succubus queen is something you want in your setting, but, like, now it's gone because you had to give her a redemption arc. And also, it's too much focusing on an NPC. Like, the focus should be on the player characters. And, like, I think what Chamomile talked about with the Prince of Grey, and this is a good contrast, that was going to happen based on Sullivan's actions.
Right.
It wasn't just going to something that was going to happen in the background. What Sullivan did was going to influence which way he goes. So if Nocticula gets a redemption arc, it should be based on, like, her interactions with the players.
Yeah, like, it's fine if... And, I mean, okay, this specific redemption arc was probably a bad idea anyway, because it was coming from a place of fetishism. But
Yeah.
in the abstract, it would be fine if a demon lord could be redeemed, provided that it was something players can influence. But Paizo almost never has branching paths in their adventure paths. And branching paths are like the minimum level of non-railroading you can have. Like, it's actually not very efficient. It's not a great way, like, in terms of content written to player agency granted, it's not a great way to go about things, but it is the most obvious and straightforward way. So, like, someone who is doing branching paths probably only has a few specific decisions that players can make, and they probably don't have a huge impact on where things are going because you don't want too much of your content to be wasted.
Right.
So that's not great, but it shows an intention, right? Like, it shows that someone wanted players to be able to make choices and probably just didn't know how to go about that efficiently. Now, for adventures that are sold for like $20 a pop, that's, not a great place to be, but it would still be, it would demonstrate an intent, and I would at least have some hope that, hey, give them a couple of adventures, they might get better at it over time. But yeah, Pathfinder was always a total railroad. The only time I've ever been able to... And they have interesting components to their adventures, right? I've been able to make perfectly good sandbox adventures by, chopping up Pathfinder adventures for parts and rearranging them in a more open way. Okay, I'm trying to climb the ladder. There's clearly a little ladder on the... That guy got up there somehow.
You're just supposed to shoot at him?
Yeah, which, like, I can do that, but... Fine, I guess I'll just
Another
cast
thing
Shield of
with, like,
Faith on herself.
Nauticula is the whole fetishy thing, because, like, every single character, because, like, people have tried to defend it saying, oh, there are other characters. But when somebody has, like, a plot-important redemption arc, and one that happens regardless of the player's actions, is, like, part of the metaplot, it's basically always a sexy lady. It's been the one succubus in Wrath of the Righteous. It's been Nocticula. It's been the Rune Lord of Lust. Like, give me a canonical metaplot-affecting redemption arc that is somebody who's an ugly dude. And, like, I don't like metaplot in general, because I feel like metaplot takes away player agency. It makes the NPC's actions more important, because the metaplot has to happen. So if part of the metaplot is Nocticula getting a redemption arc, she has to have a redemption arc. The players can't, like, decide, well, this is a demon lady, let's just kill her, or something. It robs players of their agency. Like, in World of Darkness, from my understanding, the old World of Darkness is really bad about this with their adventures, about stuff having to happen and players being robbed of their agency because the adventures have to serve the meta plot.
Yeah.
I don't like meta plot.
And
like,
I do not have...
people defend it.
I do not have an encyclopedic knowledge of World of Darkness adventures, so, I don't want to be extremely confident here, but of the 3 or 4 adventures I have read, every single one was an absolute railroad. And that was for old World of Darkness, not counting the new World of Darkness adventures, which, in fairness, of the new World of Darkness adventures that I have read, pretty much every one of them was sent to me as an example of a hilariously terrible adventure, and they asked me to please review it on my blog. So,
So, like in Pathfinder 2nd Edition, they've had a metaplot now, and the metaplot is that all the adventures happened, but the thing is, like, that means they have to have happened in a certain way, and that means they have to make choices about what happened specifically. And in Reign of Winter,
okay.
They went with having
Real
this
quick.
is going to be an intersection of stupidity. What?
Before we get into that, though, what makes me sad here, so you can have little blurbs of your party members on loading screens sometimes, which is neat, and you can even have them for mercenaries, which is super cool, except that then it just gives you, and maybe I just missed the option for this, it gives you a stock default backstory for them. Like, that's just text. I should be able to write that.